Podcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello to all of you joining us over the internet. My name is Brandon Millar, Technical Director for the California Asphalt Pavement Association. I will serve as the moderator for the April CalAPA Statewide Technical Committee webinar. As we do with all of our meetings that include different aspects of the asphalt pavement industry, even though we aren't meeting face-to-face like we would normally do with these technical committees, we still have an antitrust statement that we read at all of our meetings. And just so everyone is aware, the antitrust statement is up on your screen, and you can feel free to read it, please. Just paraphrasing it is just that we have laws that limit our discussions when you have people in a competitive marketplace. And so we just have to ensure that during our discussions today, we do not violate those laws. And some of those examples of problems would be price reduction agreements, standardizing discounts, dividing market territories, promoting group boycotts. All of that is illegal. So if at any time during this webinar anyone feels that the discussion could be perceived as breaking one of those laws, please bring it to our attention immediately so we can cease that discussion and take appropriate action. So with that, before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's webinar. So you're listening in using your computer speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the phone, just select the telephone option in the audio pane, and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions. So all questions today that you have for any of our speakers at any time will need to be provided through our questions pane of the control panel. So you may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. You don't have to wait till it breaks. So just go ahead and start typing away as soon as you get a question. And then as we go through the presentations and the discussions, as the moderator, myself, or during Mike's presentation, that'll be Mark, we will present those questions to the speaker and address them during the presentation. If it's something that we can't address right away, we'll definitely reach out to everyone with a response or a follow-up. Just so everyone also knows, this webinar will be recorded, and then we utilize these recordings for future training and educational opportunities for our association, and we'll also make this available probably through our website. We'll have a link to see this presentation later. Also, electronic copies of the agenda and the PowerPoint presentation from today are actually available to you in the pane for the handout pane. Also, if you'd like, we're more than happy to email those out to all of you. Since you all registered, we have your email addresses, so we can send those out to you as well. Or if you request, please let us know and we'll get it to you. And finally, I believe there'll be a little survey at the end of the webinar, so please fill that out, and we greatly appreciate that type of feedback. So we'll look at the agenda just so you have an idea of what we're going to be discussing today. For some brief introductions, first off, my name is Brandon Millar. I am the Technical Director for CalAPA. CalAPA was founded in 1953 and represents the asphalt pavement industry in California, including asphalt producers, refiners, binder suppliers, paving contractors, emulsion suppliers, engineering firms, equipment manufacturers, and all other stakeholders of the industry. And I will be moderating today. One of the things that I'm sure a lot of you received the invite for this is we're using this to take place of our statewide regional technical committee meetings. As you know, we would have in various regions throughout the state a technical committee meeting, which would bring together local agency, contractors, producers, and other industry stakeholders to meet and discuss on specific topics, and also to discuss what's happening locally within the agencies. So we started to do this a couple of years ago, and then we started to link those up with a technical presentation that was available online for those at the actual live location. And so with that, here we're under our current situation. We just don't have the actual physical meetings, but we're still able to get together, at least in this format. Also, I'll be the moderator. So let's go over our presenters today. We'll have Russell Snyder, the Executive Director for CalAPA. He's going to do a presentation on a special report on our industry response to the COVID-19 pandemic and how those responses affect the asphalt pavement industry here in California. Also, Mike Guyman, who's the materials engineer for Maxwell Products. He will be providing an overview of the use of mastics in addressing the maintenance and preservation of pavements. He will also be joined by Mark Avery, also with Maxwell Products, to address any questions during their presentation. Once again, feel free to type in a question for our speakers at any time using the question pane. And with that, we'll get going with our first discussion, first presentation. And that's going to be Mr. Russell Snyder with the California Asphalt Pavement Association. Russ, Mike Scardina says nice hat, and it's all yours now, Russ.
Okay, thank you, Brandon. I appreciate that, and thank you, Mike. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from the interwebs out there. And we thank you for dialing in or tuning in, as the case may be. I appreciate the introduction, Brandon. A couple of things I'm going to mention just at the outset. I am wearing some PPE that is, as I mentioned to Brandon, I'd be kind of like a prop comic today. It's a little bit of levity, but we do want to talk a little bit about safety this morning. And so just to reinforce that message and that imagery, I've got my hard hat on, I've got some gloves on, I've got a dust mask. This is not a N95 compliant mask, so don't worry, I'm not keeping it from our emergency responders or healthcare workers. I got it out of my garage, out of an old kit where I was doing some home projects, and it's about 10 years old, and the elastic was all stretched out. So this is really not doing anybody any good, but I just thought I'd wear it anyway, just as a reminder of how important the safety is in our industry, and making sure we follow the proper protocols and the industry standards that we've been putting out in concert with our agency partners. I also have something else here. You'll hear a lot about social distancing and making sure we maintain a proper distance from each other, a minimum of 6 feet. And so I have my own special alert mechanism. So if somebody gets closer to 6 feet, I give them one of these, and then they know to back off and make sure that we're working safely. So a couple of things that I want to talk about today. As Brandon mentioned, we are a nonprofit trade association representing the asphalt pavement industry in California. During this time, CalAPA is our mission as an organization. Recently, our board of directors just updated our strategic plan last year. And it really is built around some basic concepts, and we embody those in an acronym that we call PLAN, P-L-A-N. And the P is for promotion of asphalt, the use of asphalt, the proper manufacture of it and placement of it. So our association has a lot of activities related to that. The L is for learning, training and education, knowledge transfer. That's a big part of what we do. We do it in a lot of different ways. There are in-person classes. We have conferences. We have technical committee meetings, webinars such as this one and others. We have lots of publications. Our website is an important repository for a lot of that information that we make available to you 24/7. It's at your convenience when you need it. The A is for advocacy. We do represent the asphalt industry in Sacramento, and then by extension, and also Washington, D.C., and also with regulators, as well as elected officials, just to help them understand who we are and the things that are unique to our industry, and so they can better understand that as they're formulating policy and passing laws. And then finally, the N, which is greatly under stress right now, is networking. And that is where we provide a forum where industry personnel and also our agency partners can come together and meet and establish relationships and learn from each other. And we do that in many different kinds of forums as well. Because of all the face-to-face restrictions, we are unable to do that as we have traditionally done that, at least temporarily, based on the guidance we have been receiving from public health officials and others. And so, for example, we were going to have a big conference at Disney's Grand Californian in Anaheim later this month, and that conference has been canceled, unfortunately. And so we're in the process of unwinding that and communicating with all of their sponsors and folks that have registered, and then communicating with Disney about what we're going to be able to do going forward. So that's very much up in the air right now. Beyond that, everything else as it relates to our association, we are still continuing to operate and have a continuity of service. We are also practicing the social distancing, so all of our staff are working remotely. We are leveraging the technology, which we've already had in place long before this crisis happened, where we could communicate remotely and access everything that we need to access through via laptops and things of that nature. So we are continuing to do that. It's in a different way, but we want to make sure that we have continuity of service. And really, the most important and valuable thing, the highest and best use of our time as an association right now, is to get high quality, credible information, gather it, and then analyze it, process it, and then push it back out to our industry as quickly as possible, so that our member companies can make good decisions with the best possible information that we can provide to them. We do that not only with our staff, but in concert with many, many others. We have a great relationship with the National Asphalt Pavement Association, and work hand in glove with them on developing different types of information that would be useful to our industry. In addition, it's unprecedented, actually. I formerly used to work for Associated General Contractors of California, and the main construction trade associations in California are also having conference calls on a regular basis to coordinate and compare information to make sure we're all having consistency in our messaging and our response to this crisis. We just had another one on Monday morning, and that was very useful and helpful. And I congratulate my fellow partners at ADC and Yukon and Southern California Contractors Association and CalCEMA and others that have participated in those calls. And we're pooling all the best minds together to make sure that we all benefit greatly and have the most appropriate response during this crisis. So a couple of things I wanted to just report to you today. Again, somewhat humorously, I have my hard hat on, but it really is meant to reinforce that safety is the #1 priority, not only for our industry, but also I know our agency partners and public health officials during this very unusual time to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. And so there are very specific guidelines that have been put out for quite some time about how we conduct ourselves if we do, in fact, are to minimize the spread of this virus. In general, the governor's orders and regional orders, as it relates to stay-at-home proclamations and guidance, they have exempted road construction because it is generally considered an essential activity that is related to protecting our vital infrastructure during this time of crisis. So as you've seen through news reports and other venues, It's very critical during this time, even though we want to minimize the spread of this virus so that we are not overwhelming our healthcare system and make sure everybody gets the healthcare that they need during this time. But yet we still need critical services to be able to function uninterrupted. So our obviously healthcare workers and the frontline first responders, public safety officials are still on the job and doing what they're doing. And also it's very important that utilities and water, sewer, things that are involved with health and safety, and then also our transportation infrastructure, which is vital to getting goods and services and other things to those folks that are in need, that those systems stay up and running, they're safe and well maintained. And so by and large, the orders about staying at home and those types of restrictions have not extended to the road construction and maintenance activities, because that is considered a vital activity that is important for making sure our society functions during this time. But with that, there's an important responsibilities about protecting all workers and their communities and making sure that they're working as safe as possible. So most of those are fairly widely known, but there are keeping distance from 6 feet apart is one of the big ones, and some people need some reminders about exactly what 6 feet is. I've got a little tape measure, so if someone gets too close to me, I can pull this out and say, hey, you're too close. There's personal protective gear, obviously. And of course, just as always, our industry is very well versed in working safely on construction sites. And so we are folding in these additional safety reminders and precautions that are related to COVID-19 through our already existing and robust safety programs at the job sites, and our various associations that represent the construction industry in California are continuing to push out information as it relates to that. And there are some really outstanding resources out there available to folks so they can just update and refresh their safety programs, include this information, make sure that it gets in the hands of their employees, and their employees know that everybody is taking this very, very seriously. As far as working, our information goes, we are really limiting the information we are putting out to very specifically germane to the asphalt pavement industry in California. So there's lots of information, from the California Department of Public Health and from Department of Industrial Relations as it relates to workers and CalOSHA and things of that nature. We are really trying to generate information that's very specific to our industry based on what we are learning from our survey of our members and how the situation is potentially impacting their operations and what they're doing about it. I can report to you that our ongoing survey of our members, because remember, we have members that actually do the road construction, but also we have providing the materials that go into the road construction. So you can't do an asphalt pavement job without the asphalt being generated from the plant. So the restrictive orders for COVID-19 do understand and recognize and specifically call out the importance of upstream materials. Also, construction companies need access to those, and those are also exempted under these various orders that have been put out. And so, of course, asphalt is one of those upstream materials that is required for example, an asphalt pavement job. So we've been checking with our members so far. By and large, most are open with robust safety training and restrictions in place so that they can operate safely. And we will continue to do that in concert with the latest information from our public health officials and others. A couple other things that I wanted to mention about, there is actually a little bit of a silver lining with the reduced traffic from all these stay-at-home orders, is that there's a lot less vehicles on the roadway. And so Caltrans this morning had a conference call with construction industry officials, and there is continuing discussion about the opportunity to open up construction windows to be able to, we believe that with reduced traffic congestion, there's an opportunity to be able to work more efficiently and get additional highway repairs being done quickly. And so you will, there's an opportunity for that. Caltrans is releasing some guidance to their regional offices with regard to that. And in some cases, they're considering having work that was originally scheduled for night work to be done during the day. And so that could be potentially a silver lining, that we could get more roads fixed. We can do it safely, and hopefully really improve the transportation system for fellow Californians, so that when things start getting back to normal, they'll notice that they'll have a better, safer drive when they need to get to where they need to get to. There was a special emphasis by Caltrans today to make sure that this construction activity will in no way impede any kind of emergency response or transport of health workers or first responders to anywhere. That is something they're very mindful of. That will not be, no construction activity will ever hinder anything like that. That is being the first consideration, that there's ease of access for those kinds of activities across the state. As far as workers go, we have not heard many reports of workers impacted in our industry. One company I'm aware of, they're a nationwide company, and they mentioned they had about 4,000 workers, and they've only had 3 reports of positive tests of coronavirus, and none were in California. So that is a pretty good sign, hopefully, and we'll continue to monitor that closely. But by and large, as we have been surveying our members, we have not seen much of a disruption as it relates to the workforce. Caltrans continues to say this morning the Bay Area put out some new restrictive orders with regard to stay at home, and it constricted construction a little bit more, it appears, with maybe regard to private, like home construction, certain kinds of private commercial construction. But Caltrans, as of this morning, said they verified that the kind of work that they do, the public works type of activity, is still considered essential and is going to be moving forward. They did acknowledge that things like other administrative functions are being done in a different way, and we, as is everybody around the state, and so we recognize, and they recognize, that it is causing an interesting challenge for how we do what we do, and more focuses on working remotely and electronic communication with documents and things of that nature. But they are working through those issues, and so far they still said that they plan on, as far as payments and other kinds of things, inspections, they have ways to be able to achieve that and still make sure that they're doing everything that is all legal and proper per the various laws, rules, and regulations that govern Caltrans and state highway work. A couple of things I'll just mention back to our association, and then I'll turn it back over to Brandon. As I mentioned, we are putting out a lot of information as we get that information. Normally, we have a weekly newsletter that is anybody can subscribe to. You can sign up for that weekly newsletter if you would like to receive it at our website, which is right on your screen, www.calapa.net. At the very top, it says newsletter sign up, and you can sign up for our newsletter. It comes out once a week, and it is kind of the last couple of issues has been just sort of a roundup, a summary of various COVID-19 related activities that is impacting our industry. I must say, in Monday's issue, we had a really nice, a couple of nice stories about how our industry is really doing a great job of donating surplus PPE that to our emergency medical responders and healthcare workers, and also like in one case, a couple of companies got together and bought lunch for some folks at a nearby hospital. So there's lots of different ways that our industry is also stepping up and recognizing the difficulty that this crisis is creating for our communities and doing what we can. I'm also aware of some donations to local food banks and things of that nature. So that's a really great, where our industry is really showing that they have a big heart and they really care about the communities in which they work. As far as the information we're putting out, the other type of information we have is something called a member alert, and that is something that we put out to our members only. It's a private communication. It's a benefit of CalAPA membership. However, in response to this emergency, we have elected to make the decision that we are making any COVID-19 related member alerts available to anybody, and we are also posting them on our webpage. So those are coming out several times a week, and it is the very latest information that we have as we receive it and verify it and fact check it and make sure that it's in context. But so on our website, it's calapa.net, and then on our safety page is where those are posted. There's a few links to some NAPA resources and some safety resources that we find are very useful, but also our member alerts have a lot of links, especially to the latest health orders, for example, or some new guidance that we receive from a public agency that is germane to this dealing with this crisis. So that's our latest and best information. We are making that freely available to anybody. And then we're not the only ones that are doing this. I know that some other associations as well are being very generous with providing information and making it freely available. I know our national partners, the National Asphalt Pavement Association, is doing that as well, which we greatly appreciate. And it really just brings it down to a central point, is that we're all in this thing together. These are extraordinary circumstances none of us have ever seen before. But there are parallels to other disasters and other things. My previous career in Caltrans, I just wrote about this recently in our magazine, which will be coming out in a couple of weeks, about during the Northridge earthquake in Los Angeles in 1994. And I was involved in the industry and agency response to that, and it was quite inspiring how everybody worked together to get the freeways rebuilt and get Los Angeles back and moving again. And so I see parallels to that. I see a great esprit de corps by everybody to make sure we work safe, we protect our communities, but we also do what we can to make sure that things function and are operational during this difficult time. So with that, I want to thank you for tuning in. That's kind of the overall assessment of what's happening and what we're doing and some of the information that we have that is available to you. And with that, I will turn it back over to Brandon Millar, and he will continue on with the rest of the presentation. I will be happy if there are any questions to answer those before I sign off.
Thank you, Russ. Yeah, if you have any questions, please go ahead and type them in. In regards to the member alert and some of those, as Russ mentioned, the member alerts related to the COVID-19 were recently posted on the CalAPA website for everyone to view. And from a technical aspect, I'd like most of you to take a look at the March 23rd member alert. So it's at the calapa.net site under safety resources. In March 23rd, in that member alert, there is some information related to laboratory certifications, tester certifications through the Caltrans IA program. Also an update on certifications for the Joint Training and Certification Program. For those of you involved in testing, but even for the folks out in the engineers out there who are looking to ensure that the testers on your projects that are ongoing have the proper certs. That's some very important information for everyone to understand. What is the process, the extensions for existing certifications, what's the process for new certifications. So please go ahead and visit that specific member alert, and there's links in that member alert to additional resources to find more information on that. So with that, Russ, anything else?
No, thank you, Brandon, for mentioning that. And there is a couple of other significant guidance that Caltrans did produce, and we've been having an ongoing dialogue with them about. We do need guidance from them and every other agency, frankly, about how we are to operate and conduct ourselves in this kind of environment with these changes that are required. And so Caltrans has been doing their best to get that kind of guidance out to our industry, and we have, as they release them, we have included links to those guidance documents in our member alerts. Just two that come to mind are, for example, one of the early guidance that they put out was about how working days are treated with regard to something like, there's actually, believe it or not, specification language in Caltrans specifications that talk about pandemics. It's amazing. And so they actually have envisioned that in the specifications, and there is a revision in there for working days and how they treat those with regard to something like this. The other thing, a couple of other things that they put out are relate with how disputes are handled, and also these are called construction policy directives, CPDs as they're known, and they're sometimes they are posting them on the Caltrans website, but sometimes they're hard to find. So that's why we're embedding those links in our member alerts. Another CPD that they put out had to do with directing everybody to update their safety plans with COVID-19 information. And so everybody I know was doing that, but it's good that they have official guidance that is something they expect everybody to do. So again, that's important information. As we receive it, we push it back out in those member alerts, and any local guidance that we think is helpful as well, we try to include that. That's one of our main vehicles for communicating right now. I was kidding with Brandon. I said, we've kind of turned our association into a newsroom. I mentioned I used to work in the news business. I used to work for United Press International. I worked in the Washington Bureau of the world headquarters. And we would get news worldwide that would come into the Bureau. We would edit it, and then we would send it back out to media clients like, the LA Times, the New York Times, or the Washington Post, or whenever, all around the world, actually. And so it was very important that we gather lots of information, but we make sure we don't want to, everybody's overwhelmed with information these days. So we want to make sure that we really get it down to just the key things that you need to know, and then get that out quickly, again, so people can make their decisions. So from the CalAPA newsroom in Davis, California, where I'm working right now out of my home, back to you, Brandon.
Thank you, Russ. One final item in regards to, let's talk about job mix formula verifications. As you know, we're at the beginning of the construction season. There is another, there is the job mix formula verification through the project, through your local Caltrans district, but also for producers and other folks to remember is that there's also a program for doing job mix formulas, having job mix formulas approved by Caltrans without having a Caltrans EA, and that process goes through METS up in Sacramento. So if you have if you'd like additional information in regards to that, please go to the Caltrans website for METS, and there's a website dedicated for having those job mix formulas verified, what the process is, and how you can submit a request to have that done. So keep that in mind, and we can keep things moving so that when all of this does finally subside, everyone has another avenue to get your mix designs and not overwhelm maybe your district lab. So keep that in mind as well. All right, with that, we're going to move on to our second presentation, which is there we go, which is mastics in addressing maintenance and preservation of pavements. Mike Guyman with Maxwell Products. I'm going to turn it over to him, and he will share with you some of the interesting ways these mastics are being used to extend and improve the life of our pavements. So go ahead, Mike.
Hang on just a second. Okay, there we go. All right, so we are a hot applied cracks and joint sealant and mastic manufacturer. We will be focusing today on mastic and patching materials as a mid to long-term solution, excuse me, as opposed to R&R or repetitive short-term fixes. To the next, see if the slides are. Hang on just a second. Looks like we're still struggling just a little bit with the controls. Let's see.
All right, hang on. Make sure you're good. All right, Mike.
Okay, so I still don't.
Use your keyboard.
I am. So I just see the first slide, but I'm not able to advance it here. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right.
You got it
Okay,
now?
there we go.
Mike,
Yeah, I got.
Mike, I want
Thank
to jump in real quick. We're going to do
Yeah.
about a third, a little more than a third of the presentation, and then make a quick pause to answer some questions, and then we'll also have questions at the very end. If you think of things, you can type them in to the question portion, and we'll load them up for the break, if that makes sense.
Right, that sounds fine. All right, so you can see here, the next slide, just talk a little bit about some of the things that the mastic materials do. And okay, so this is the slide he has for me. I just want to introduce myself. I'm Mike Guyman. I started doing heavy oil and asphalt research back in 1984, and ever since then I've been involved in that type of research. About 17 years ago, I started working for Maxwell Products as a lead researcher, and about 15 and a half years ago, we applied our first beta test for mastic materials. This is one of the most interesting projects I've ever been involved in. I've been developing products for over 35 years, but this is a product that I wasn't underwhelmed. I have been very, very, excited and impressed with the materials. Some of the very first tests we ever put in 15 and a half years ago are still in place. The first time we did it, we didn't have the right binder, we didn't have the right aggregate, we didn't have the right percentages, but again, the materials are still there, still doing their job. And hundreds and hundreds of field tests later, we now have 15 different products in the mastic patch line. And just to mention, Mark Avery is our Southern California rep, and he will be helping me with this presentation. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. So, so here in our gap mastic is designed for wide cracks. It started off being an asphalt repair for thermal cracks. As you go down the highway every 25 to 30 feet, you hear a thump. Well, you've got that crack, and you've got material that has washed out the base of the road a little bit, so you've got a little thump every so often in the road. The gap mastic materials were designed for that originally, but as you'll see in the upcoming slides, there are a lot of different ways to use this material. And so just so you know, the rocks are important, the aggregate's important, the binder's important. It's very important that the binder is clean, and also our binders are that we've worked on are designed to suspend the aggregate, and the aggregate is designed to be suspended. Okay, let's see if we still have. It looks like we've lost control again. Let's see.
Nope, you've got it.
Okay, there we go. Okay, great. So this just shows a little bit. You can read up on the screen. We're going to move through these pretty quick. Let's see. We'll go back. Okay, so Mark, you want to tell us a little bit about this? Oh, sorry.
So this, the one you were showing there is in the high desert. You're talking about the picture? Yeah, there we go. Desert's very much a challenge. It has the thermal cracks. It goes from low temps, 30 degrees in the morning, to 100 degrees by 1, 2 p.m. So we need a little bit of flexibility. And this is a mastic high temp climate product. We call gap mastic, just as a name. The little cart is shown there for being able to jockey around kind of the crazed spiderweb cracking that you'll see in the desert. This is up in Phelan, California, for anyone who knows where that is.
Okay.
South of Palmdale.
Okay, and this one, oh, sorry. Boy, it's wanting to zip through. Do you want to tell us about that one too, Mark?
Sure. This is an HOA a little bit west of Lake Elsinore, up in the mountains. And they had wide thermal cracks, but they also, since they didn't have curb and gutter, they have alligatoring where it comes to each of the edges. And so prior to slurry seal, we coated it with these and also filled and sealed the wide thermal cracks. When the slurry came back over it, you can almost not tell where the material was.
Okay, so so this is another solution. In Minnesota, there are entire crews that spend all summer long doing nothing but this, for going from city to city to help with the drainage issues. Okay, Mark, you want to hit this one again?
Just another example. It's taking on popularity in the high desert because these types of cracks are just so common. This was in a auto parking lot, and the same kind of issue. It was difficult to jockey things around, so we used this smaller device that we filled from the kettle device. It's a remote cart, and it makes for quick filling and sealing of the cracks.
Okay, let's see if we can. Okay, so of course it's important to clean off the crack. This is thermal cracking in Minnesota. This is the main contractor. They put down 20 or 30 truckloads of material a year. That first they cleaned it, then they primed it, and then they'll do an original pass with 12 inches. The idea behind this is to create a flexible joint in the pavement, and then they'll come back through and with a bigger box to level the road.
One thing Mike could address, we want to prime 100% of concrete. Can you tell why we would prime asphalt, or why in some cases we wouldn't need to?
Yeah, so so we have a primer that we use in most places, but we can't use that in California. So we've gone to emulsions from Reed and Graham and several other manufacturers that Mark can fill us in on, where we prime first. And the reason why we do this is for a water barrier in case water comes up back in around the fix. There are a lot of places where we don't use primer, but if you have water issues at all, we definitely recommend primer. Okay, so they're doing the second pass over it. There's been a lot of work in Minnesota with ride quality, and this, our materials have been right in the middle of among other manufacturers with that research. And then topping stone is really great. If you're fixing big wide areas, it's really nice to get a little bit of friction on the top of the material. And it also sets up a little quicker traffic.
Mike, you can let them know also that it's not slippery without the topping stone.
That's correct.
Maybe even cite the NCAT test.
Yes, we've done a number of tests with friction with NCAT, and so we have some friction numbers we can share with anybody who's interested. But if you're fixing big wide areas, that's where we're most concerned with that. So anyway, here's a specification for our gap mastic D material. This is a material that's designed for the Southern California area, and you can see we have specifications for that kind of relate to both the warm temperatures that your material is going to experience, and also the colder temperatures, and then we have a little bit of information about our aggregates. just so you know that these are very, very specialized aggregates that we use in all of our products, and they are meant to maximize friction and also to be suspended so that there are rocks near the surface of the product. Let's go down. All right, any questions so far?
I see one that's popped up is from Sarah Chavez. She says, what's the difference between mastic and crack seal? I'll let you answer that.
It's more structural. And, you know, I remember the first year that, one of the first years that I was with Maxwell Products, somebody took some of our ASTM 6690 Type 2 materials and spread them out all over the road. And there were, they had issues with motorcycles slipping on the material and all kinds of problems. And you know, one of the things about mastic is that you can spread the material all over the road in big wide areas safely. That's probably the biggest.
And that's the only question we have in the queue. I don't know if anybody's typing like mad or has all their questions answered. We've touched on mastics first, and then we're going to move into patching materials, which is a robust version of mastic. So this seemed like a good place to stop.
Let me just insert one more comment on that. So after I had been with the company for about, you know, a few months, I could already see a lot of repairs that I could not do with crack sealant. And so that's the reason why we did our mastic materials, and then we, you know, refined those materials. We have, you know, currently 15 different products for different climates, different situations, and every one of those has, you know, a specific thing that it does to help, you know, resolve issues quickly and semi-permanently for, you know, for these repairs. And when I got to the point where I could see our mastic materials could not repair some things, then we started working on the patching materials, which can even fix more defects.
And Mike, we do have a question from Roger Smith. Hi, Roger. He's asking the binder type.
So each of the binders are selected based on the lowest temperatures that the material are going to experience, and they are all highly polymerized. There are many different types of polymers that we use in our binders, and each one has a job. And it's been very, very fascinating. It's the most complex chemistry that I've ever experienced in the more than 35 years since I graduated from school. And also the binders are designed for the high temperature, you know, that they're going to experience. For example, we'll see some slides later in the presentation down near, let's see, what was the area that we were in, La Quinta, where the temperature on the pavement in the summertime is sometimes 170 degrees Fahrenheit, and the ambient temperature is what, 123, 124 degrees outside.
Yeah, the record was 123. Yeah.
So the materials have to be designed for the climate and situation they're going to find themselves in.
We've got more questions coming in. So this is from Susan Fong. Oh, hi, Susan. She says, our field crew already use your product. However, the comments are that costs being high, do you expect to have it come down as more people are using it?
Well, you could probably answer that better than I do, but one of the situations that I found myself in recently, we were fixing a section of road on I-15 near Butte, Montana, and we were able to use about 2 tons of material to fix a defect on the freeway that would have taken 26 tons of hot mix asphalt to do the same thing. So I guess it depends on you have to look at the entire picture, and it's I'm not sure about the cost. Oil's costs are not shrinking, but that it could be a possibility.
It's very, very similar in price to a crack seal, but use quite a bit more of it, obviously, for cracks and potholes, large cracks. Do you have another question here? This is from Paul Van Norman. Hey, Paul, how long should you wait before paving or sealing over the material? Were you able to hear me, Mike?
Okay, can you hear
We
me
lost
now?
our. Yes, definitely. Did you hear the question from Paul?
Actually, no, I didn't.
So it's how long should you wait before paving or sealing over? And whose dog is that?
I guess that's one of the problems of working from home. So the question again was about paving. We have a little bit limited experiences over our patching materials, but because they're so structurally sound, we've done pretty well. You could probably within a month or two go over the top of the material. I think at one time we were telling people 6 months over mastic, give it a chance to stiffen a little bit up on and oxidize on the surface. But if it's possible, they've had some issues where they had their vibrators on right over the top of the material and kind of created a wave through material that was fairly new. And so, so if it's possible to turn your vibrator off over the top of the mastic materials, that might be good. We haven't had any issues with going over the top of these materials with emulsion products like slurry seals or chip seals. In fact, we recommend that people do chip seals over the top of our sealants and our mastics and our patch material, because we'll show you some slides later on in the presentation that deal with that.
Okay, and we have another question from Brian Litz. Hi, Brian. He'd like to know, do we use aggregate from a specialized source or slag?
We have tested various things. We have tested various recycled sources of aggregates. As of right now, our sources are naturally occurring or in some cases man-made materials, but they're not from like a recycled source right now.
Sound like you're keeping it close to the vest. Is that proprietary?
Well,
you talked about it being washed and triple washed. Could you touch on that briefly too?
yes. Well, what we discovered, in all of these field trials, is that if the aggregates are not clean, that it creates a film on the outside of the aggregate, and the binder, may have a hard time attaching or gluing everything together. And so, in some of the materials that we have seen out in real life, it could, start to fail internally if the aggregates are not clean, to begin with.
Brandon, it looks like you can check me, but I think that's all the questions for right now.
Okay, great. So do you want me to advance to the next slide? Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead and continue.
Okay, let's see if we still have it here. Okay, there we go. So, so anyway, you can see just a little bit some of the pictures of some of the things that we make. The picture on the left is a wintertime pothole repair material that I designed for Minnesota. I talked to some of the engineers up there yesterday, and they're telling us that after 4 years, that you know, more than 95% of those materials are still in place. The 500 series material was, I put my first test sections down about 5 years ago, and we still have less than 3% failure in all the 500 series. So up in the Sacramento area, you'd be talking about the gap patch 550, and down in Southern California, you'd be talking about the gap patch 570, unless you're up in the mountains, and then you would probably go to a softer material. Okay, so these are some of the things that we can do with the patching materials. We can actually go to full depth repairs. I have made repairs that were up to 11 inches deep. You know, you have extremely you know, intense truck traffic. We have some of our materials have been placed in the truck lane on several of your freeway systems. We'll show you a little bit about that later on. And it's been down for quite some time. I know the very first materials we put down were out on I-10 in the truck lane, and they were in place until they replaced the concrete slabs on the road. It's very interesting with these patching materials. We actually, you know, our patching materials are less likely to crack than sealant. It's really an interesting situation, and of course, skin coating over deteriorated pavement. We'll show you some pictures. Okay, Mark, you want to take over for this one?
So we realize you're an asphalt association, but we wanted to, as Brandon and I talked about yesterday, that a lot of times we put asphalt over concrete because it has lots of problems. So we just want to let you know that it can handle concrete or asphalt. The one on the left is on 210 in San Bernardino, and the one on the right is on I-10 in Redlands. And if you scroll through, next slide, the left one is the 210 one complete. It was an emergency repair. There was 5 or 6 distressed areas like this. Something caused a motorcycle to tumble down, and they did an emergency repair using the material because it can get traffic on so quickly. And the right one is just the finished Redlands one.
Yeah, the material was, all of our materials were originally designed for asphalt pavements, but then some of our customers started using them on concrete surfaces, and so we went back and did some additional modifications to the materials, and also did a lot of research to make sure that the materials would work in both substrates.
The other thing too is obviously the freeways, it's more of a proving ground because it gets so much truck traffic. And so we're going to get the concrete pictures out of the way first.
Yes, so anyway, this is another one that's, you can tell them where that is too, Mark.
Yeah, that's on I-15 going into San Bernardino between Sierra and Summit. The pictures are on the northbound side, but they repaired over 300 spalls like this in 3 days. They used 6 pallets of material. They were going to use fast patch, but the superintendent decided to try our material because he was concerned the fast patch might actually pop out. So he was very happy with it. And this is just some pictures and the situation and the angry people backed up in traffic in the middle of the night.
Okay, so So you can see one of the melters. This is a double boiler melter, so you're heating oil, which heats our product. In each of the boxes, we have a weight amount of binder and sealant. So each one of those boxes is a mini kit, if you will, for patching. About, for every one of those boxes that you throw in the kettle, about 3.5 gallons of material will come out the back. You can also see in this particular unit, there is an auger system in the back, and this is essential for the 500 series patch materials. We can basically put an entire pallet of material out of this kettle in less than 9 minutes. Okay, so okay, so you want to talk about this, Mark, just a little bit?
Sure. This is a recent one done in District 7. This is a 210 truck connector going northbound to I-5 and in Sylmar, and they had I think a couple different products that were failing, popping out. I won't tell them the competitors' names or anything like that, but they I wanted to show you the flexibility of this stuff. Is that this is going around rocker panels. We'll show another one a video later, and this lane is where the trucks split off, this truck only lane, and so we were counting at 2 trucks on the low side to 8 trucks per minute hit this 24 hours a day. It's amazing what you guys have to do to maintain freeways. But I just spoke recently to a couple of the people that have been watching this, and they're very happy with the results.
It's really interesting to me. We discovered something very interesting about these materials, and actually it kind of relates to all mastics. Is that the higher the traffic load, actually it kind of works the material and makes it even work better. It's kind of a strange situation, but if we're going to have an issue with some of our mastic materials, usually it's on roads that don't have a lot of traffic. Okay, so we're going to see if I can get this next. Let's see. It's not responding. Oh, there we go. Oh, no. I don't know what happened with that exactly. Oh. So we're going to try to play a video for you if we can get it to work.
Go back 2, Mike, and then forward 1.
Okay. It's not responding.
I got it, Mike.
Okay.
Why is this not playing?
Hang on just a second. Let me see if it does it for me now. Oh, no.
Try again.
Let's try that again. Now that's interesting.
I think it has a long lead in.
Okay.
Might be black for a couple seconds.
Let's see if it'll just go.
No, it's not going to let us go on this one, Mike.
Okay. Okay. So was that the one with Oregon? Do you remember?
Yeah, that was the one where they're doing the shoulder seam repair.
Okay, yeah. So what we had is the Oregon DOT had right on the shoulder of the road. So basically a concrete road with with an asphalt shoulder, and of course every place where you get the asphalt up against the concrete, the asphalt usually loses, and in this particular case they had 6-inch deep ruts or potholes along the side of that road, and motorcycles were hitting it, and some cases losing control. So we made some emergency material for them, sent it up, and they basically fixed the shoulder of that road for 30 miles with a box. And it, you know, actually I was up there after 9 years, and even some of the material was actually still in place after that time. So well, let's advance to the next. There we go. Okay, Mark, you want to tell us about this? I think it's the on-ramp, right?
Yeah, this was a hideous test that the superintendent wanted to do to kind of a proving ground for our material. This is an on-off ramp in San Bernardino, Palm Avenue, if you know the area, on the 215. And it was set up to be repaired soon, within a year and a half. And they wanted to see what would happen if we pulled a 4-foot box and went over the top of multiple repairs without priming. The only thing we did to prep was to blow with a backpack blower, and the results were very impressive. This road sees a lot of truck traffic from UPS and Walmart in the area, and so it's just constantly being pounded, and it held up well. We went over areas that were holding puzzle pieces together, and also areas that were actual pop-out flat potholes, and we made it all in one pass, and there was no failure, there was no reflection cracking. I don't think it lasted a year before our material lasted, but I don't think it was a year until they replaced the whole ramp. So it was probably something like 8 months maybe.
We usually don't, we ask people not to do repairs over the top of cold mix because it doesn't really adhere well to cold mix, but in this case, it did pretty well. I think the cold mix repairs were fairly old. Okay, so let's see if it will let us do. This is an introduction of a box hole, basically a screed. Yeah, it looks like we're going to get this one. So, so what we're doing here is this is basically an R&R section. They were about to rip this road out, and they wanted to see if they could put an interlayer over the alligatoring and see if that would keep the cracks from coming up through the chip seal. And it actually has done that now for 2 winters. This is in Boise, Idaho, and it was they really liked it a lot. So this might be, you know, something you could do, you know, as opposed to you know, taking 4 days and tearing out the whole road. This took us about 4 hours to repair this section. Okay, Mark, you want to hit this one?
This is in Lake Elsinore City. Yeah, it's a popular frontage road if you're down in the I-15 area by Lake Elsinore. And we were doing a side-by-side. A competitor was had used some of their mastic on the opposite side, and Lake Elsinore City wanted to try our 570 material, and they were very happy, very pleased with it. It sealed and also leveled out the rut in one pull.
How long is that down for now?
Can you say again?
How long has that been down for now, Mark?
Oh boy, I want to say it'd be coming up on 2 years in June.
Okay. All right, so this is a section also that Mark worked on near Big Bear, California, right?
Yes, Highway 18. Wanted to show, because I know the Caltrans people always hit me up with questions. What about the grapevine? What about snow? And we tell them that, well, it's in Minnesota, so it's holding up well there. And I just like to show this, that it holds up very well with chains and multiple plowings without failure, without being pulled out of a pothole. Go to the next slide to show the examples of some of the ones we did.
one of the experiences that we had when we did our first beta test with West Valley City near Salt Lake up here, the guys wanted to see what it would do with the snowplows, and so they before it had even snowed, they pulled out their snowplow and tried to tear it up, and they were very happy with the result. They weren't able to tear up any of the material.
It shows the final result. They basically still look like that after all the plowing and chains.
All right, you want to hit this one too?
So you were talking about La Quinta. This is HOA in La Quinta. I've been talking with an engineer who actually lives in La Quinta HOA, this HOA, and he really wanted to try gap mastic. Well, I began talking to Mike about the high temps out there, and they'd seen records of 123 before, and we were concerned because most HOAs have a lot of construction, they have a lot of trucks parking on the streets, and of course garbage trucks. We were concerned that the mastic might leave a tire track if it was 120 out. So this was the first time that I was involved in Southern California with a skin coating of the 570 material rather than a mastic. And so that area previous would have been R&R, of course. And then they coated it with type 2 slurry. I think it was 6 weeks later. And there's no visible telescoping up. That you'll see fine micro cracks around the edges of the patched areas, but nothing deep where water can intrude in. Even the HOA people were who become experts in asphalt and crack seal are out there with their microscopes, and they really like the results.
So Mark, I couldn't hear the last things that you said, but I was here with Mark the year after it was applied, and the trucks hadn't left very many marks like in the material. It looked pretty decent to me. Okay, so these show 5 of our patch materials. These are for different climates, and the Gap Patch 330 and the Gap Patch 530 material are for the northern 1/3 of the United States and the southern 1/3 of Canada. The 550 pretty much covers the midsection of the country, and that even includes Sacramento and Northern California area. It works pretty well up there. They've been using it for several years. The Gap Patch 570 was designed for Southern California, and it has been, how long, Mark? Has it been 3 years since the first beta test that we put down here in Southern California?
I want to say maybe 3, maybe 2.5, actually.
Okay.
Time flies.
Yes. What we've discovered though is that one size doesn't fit all. You really need to design materials for the application that you have to do if you want them to perform well. The 550 material and the 570 materials, I know that we were able to apply over 200 test batches of material before we actually released the 550 on its first beta test. This shows a little bit of specifications. This is for the 550. You can look up there at the softening point of the binder. For the high temperature part of it. We've also started doing impact testing on our samples. This material actually does pretty well at -25 degrees Fahrenheit on the impact testing. And as far as like the low temperature properties, the flexibility of this material is flexible to 0 degrees, as opposed to something that you would use down in the valley in Southern California, like the 570 that you're seeing up on your screen. We only expect it to pass flexibility at 15 degrees, but it's a much faster setting material. I think I remember when we were on 210, we basically had 2.5 hours to fix all of the potholes between 2 mile markers. And we had 2.5 hours to do it before we had to be off the freeway. So this is a extremely fast setting material. One of the things that we learned about the 550 material the first year is that the crews, you know, the first beta test that did it, they had a cold mix crew going at the same time. They were able to increase their pothole repair production by 50%. And out of the first 6,000 potholes that they fixed, they only had to go back and replace material from 2 of our holes. All right. Any questions? I can't hear you, Mark.
Oh, I guess I have to take mute off. Sorry. So Sarah is asking, have you seen the pushing repairs for bus stops? I'm assuming she means, is it pushing at a bus stop?
You know, I have seen a little bit of pushing, especially if the material underneath our product is soft and pushes itself. So right at the beginning of an intersection, sometimes where a big vehicle like that stops, and you know, so you have all that forward momentum, and then it just stops on top of it. Personally, I haven't seen anything at a bus stop yet, but I have seen a little tiny bit, like in the Vegas area, in the Las Vegas area, right in front of an intersection. I have seen a little bit of pushing, but not so much with the patching materials.
And then we've got Paul again asking, do municipalities ever bid the material by the surface area, like lineal feet, or mainly by the ton?
I'm sorry, I lost you again, Mark.
Okay, so Paul's asking, can you hear me now, first of all?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Do municipalities
you're cutting in and out.
Okay. How about you, Brandon? Can you pick that one up?
Yeah, I hear you fine, Mark.
Okay.
I couldn't hear the
maybe it's your signal. So do municipalities ever bid the material by the surface area, lineal feet, or mainly by the ton?
I've seen it by the linear feet. Not so much with this material by the ton, but by the linear foot is normally what I've seen.
And then Mike is asking what kind of interlayer in ID grid, question mark. ID, I'm not sure what you're asking, sorry.
Hey, Mike, Mike, I think that question is related to in that image of the Idaho project, right? There was an interlayer or a fabric at the end.
Oh, okay. So what we do, let me see if I can get back up to that one really quick. Okay. Let's see. So so what we did at the end of where we were terminating, oh, there we go, right there. So at the termination, we had some tar paper that we had, you know, used duct tape to mask the end of it so that we could have a nice clean finish at the end of our work. You know, but I also use another material that's a high temperature silicone coated release fabric that I use for the same purpose. And then at the end of like something like this, I set that aside till it cools off, and I can peel it up and throw it right back in the kettle again. So there's no waste from the repairs we do like that. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, he clarified it later for Idaho, the interlayer prior to chip sealing is what he was clarifying.
Yes, that is correct. And we did that both with our mastic material and also with the Gap Patch 550. This particular material, the deepest repair on what you're looking at right here, was only about 1/2 of an inch deep. Whereas with the patching material, we were able to go down 3 or 4 inches deep in some areas where they had deeper defects that we had to fix. And both of those have performed very well.
Got another question from Sarah. Do you have applications for small runway repairs?
We have fixed a lot of runways. Probably the first commercial job I ever did was in Meeker, Colorado, where we used the mastic material to fix very, very large cracks in a runway. We also used the mastic material to fill the center dip where the center tire on an airplane would come down and make a little rut right down the middle of the runway, and they were having issues with, staying inside that little path. And so we actually leveled that for them too. There are things coming up in the next year where patching materials will be used on airports. It will be a very, very good application for these materials, and in particular, right where the airplanes land. Where the most force is exerted on the runway surface.
Sarah also is asking, what is the warranty time for the mastic? I'm assuming patch as well.
Yeah, so I'm not sure that we have a warranty right now. I've encouraged them to do that. Some of our customers, like for example in Minnesota, one of our customers has a 1-year warranty on the materials, and we encourage that because the materials have been very long-lived. Eventually, on those thermal cracks, you might get a crack developing, but you almost will never have a pothole developing. Whereas if you hadn't repaired it, you would definitely have had within a year or a year and a half, you would have potholes in those areas.
That's the last of our questions. David wrote a nice note and just said, thanks for presenting this. Thank you for that, David. I don't have any other questions on there that I can see, unless I've missed something.
I was going to share, let's see if I have I think I have like a timeline of some of these items. One of the things maybe to kind of elaborate on what she was saying or asking a few minutes ago, in the past 4 years since we started releasing our patching materials of the 500 series, we have had company-wide less than 5% failure of those products. And if there has been any failure, normally it's because of underground water pressure coming up underneath the materials, which is another good reason to apply a primer, because it creates a water barrier for after you're done with the fix. If the water comes back in around the material through the pavement, that you have something to keep it from making the materials release from hydraulic pressure.
Mike, did you want to finish out the one story at NCAT with that, because it's similar to what you were just talking about with water pumping up from below, and what NCAT is doing, and Buzz Powell's reaction is a nice thing.
Oh, absolutely. So a number of years ago, we were giving a presentation in North Dakota. We met Buzz Powell from NCAT. He had some issues on the test track, and in particular on Lee Road 159. If there's a big defect in the middle of his road, and these big quarry trucks hit the defect, they will bounce for a number of feet down the road and affect his other test sections. And he had, in 4 years, they had tried 4 different types of patch material in a place where they had underground water problems. I think at one point they must have even had like a water main break underneath the road. And so what we did is we went back and we looked at it, and we could have just gone over the top of the old materials, but because of the water issues underneath, we decided to do a full depth repair. So the material, after we had cleaned out all of the other rubble and the debris in the pothole, it ended up to be about 5 feet by 6 feet and about 6 inches deep in some places. So we chose to do a full depth repair with the patch material, and we applied it. And they've sent me pictures, just recently, and the material. I guess it's probably been 3 years since we fixed that. It still really looks like that it had been fixed a couple weeks ago. It just has not been affected at all. It does not have the type of truck traffic that you have on your freeways here, but it would have, for example, probably 145,000, overloaded trucks coming out of a quarry each year.
And we did have one more question from Roger again. He's asking, any chance that we're working on a cold emulsion mastic product?
Okay, so most of the time that what we've gone over the top of works pretty well. But if you have like a cold emulsion type of base underneath it that is likely to push and shove, then sometimes that doesn't work out so well. It will appear as though our materials are pushing, but in reality, it's the very soft materials underneath it that are still moving.
And then Brian has another question. How are these products sold? From an asphalt mix plant, boxes, sacks? And his follow-up says, we're interested in how we offer this to our customers.
Okay, let's see if we can, I don't know if we can get back up to that picture where the blocks are, but let's see. So they're sold in individual containers, and the patch materials are close to 40 pounds each, and then they're put inside of the melter that you can see there. Let me see if we can get back up to. Let's see.
Or one video would have shown that nicely, them throwing the blocks in.
Yes, I don't know if that.
The one that didn't play.
Right, that's right. This see if we can. It's not really the screen's not responding, but so we're the boxes that we sell the material in are expanded polystyrene, and they are structural. They're built like Legos, and I don't know if oh, there we go. Darn, we shouldn't have touched it.
Okay, I got it, Mike.
You got it? Okay. So this will answer his questions.
It's this one?
Okay. Yes, that's the one.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the one. So this was the repair in Oregon, the shoulder repair. You can kind of see what it looks like when. So this is how the materials come, is in pallets like that, and we don't recommend that you throw the material right in the top like that, but we usually have you put it on a lid and then put it in. But that basically that block of material gets melted in a matter of minutes, and this is the repair they did for about 30 miles over the top of this road. So I hope that answers your question. It comes in blocks from us in Salt Lake, and I think Mark has a warehouse.
Yeah, in Mira Loma, and there's also one up in Sacramento for California people. Paul has another follow-up question. Do you offer smaller blocks for quicker meltdown time?
Not at this time, but we are considering it. It's you know, it does. That probably is the hardest thing that we do, is to melt the blocks. It takes about 2.5 hours to get to melt a kettle full of material, but then as the day progresses, we can just add blocks and let the kettle recover for 5 minutes. You know, or you know, sometimes we'll pull the kettle all the way down to the shaft, so basically half, and then fill up the kettle again and let it recover for 30 minutes, and then go again. So that is a little bit of a challenge, but I myself, not anyone else helping me, I've put down 4,000 pounds of material in a day.
Oh, another one just popped in here from Sarah. Are there authorized contractors, or can any contractor buy and apply?
You could probably answer that better than me. But let me say something really quick. One of the things that I've been doing is, like with a crew from that was doing this project on I-15 up in Montana, is they came into town for a day, and I spent a day training them and getting them ready to do this repair on I-15 in front of the state DOT and inspectors. So if anybody would like to have training, either Mark can train you down there, or we would even be willing to train you in Salt Lake if you come in for a day. We have all the equipment there, and we could actually train your crew how to do this work.
And so, kind of to answer specifically about local projects, what we try to do is go into areas like the high desert, you know, San Diego, LA County, separate, because we know that San Diego people might not be going up to Palmdale or Sacramento to do jobs. And this way also, if counties or cities or Caltrans even doesn't want to do the work, they can ask for someone who's been trained. And so I do this. Ted Maxwell in Northern California. If you don't know how to get a hold of Ted, you can get through me on the email and phone number at the end, and I'll patch you through to him. Michelle Anderson and I have divvied up Southern California, so some of you are talking to her. But we can come out and, like Mike said, and familiarize your crew. Your crew will be experts much more than we are after 2 hours. And I say that because most contractors are very innovative and smart, and they see quickly little faster ways to do things. And so, yeah, we'd love to come out and train crews. Love it. Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. Van asks, I think you've answered this before. How long do you need to wait for the crack sealant to cure before you can place a slurry on the pavement?
Okay, so some people have done it almost immediately over the top of our materials. You know, we have crews in Arizona that you know, you put the material down, and as soon as the temperature is down to 125 degrees on the surface, you know, on the 570, or actually 122 degrees on the surface, you can actually drive over it, and at that point they've put slurry over the top of it.
Then Paul asks again, would you consider doing free demos? We don't even like the word free. I'm kidding. We do them all the time, Paul. We do them. We just did one recently for San Bernardino County. Myself and Ted in Northern California does them all the time, and also all of us reps will be able to come out because it is a newer type of a product. We'll come out on a project and be there for the first day or two to make sure everybody gets everything done correctly. And so yes, we will. If it's to patch somebody's private driveway, probably not. If it's city, county, Caltrans, absolutely. Just give us a call. Looks like that's the last question I had. And I don't see any more coming in yet.
That's good. If anyone has any further questions, Mike and Mark's contact information is in the presentation that you have access to right now on the bottom of your in the document window. And also, we can also send that to you as well, and you'll have their contact information. So with that, we're going to be coming here to a close of our webinar. I just wanted to remind everyone that we will be having another one of these webinars on Wednesday, May 6th. That one we will be discussing the use of polymer modified asphalt binders in asphalt mixes. And we'll probably have another presentation as well once we get that secured, finalized. And then for that, we want to thank you all for attending today's CalAPA Statewide Technical Committee webinar for April 2020. Feel free to contact myself or our office if you have any questions. And on behalf of the California Asphalt Pavement Association, our presenters, we thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.